Hello, stakeholder! My name is Aloísio Barros, partner of Abreu Barros, Gestão Contábil e Tributária, Master in International Accounting, doing this business in Brazil, and I'm here to talk to you about the Brazilian tax reform, the general aspects, and how this is going to affect companies, how it's going to change the table regarding the taxes in Brazil, how the idea is to simplify and how they are doing, the transition period, and the impacts for you as a professional, as companies, and the strategies that you have to have in this period to be ready for it. So the Complementary Law was published in January 2025, and it changed a lot on how Brazilians deal with taxes and how the government deal with the Brazilians and Brazilian companies, and now even foreign companies in some cases, and we'll see in this presentation what are the cases. So my expectations are that in a few minutes you have an overview of the Brazilian tax scenarios and understand better the concepts, the timeline, why the tax reform it's mandatory in Brazil basically, what are the scenarios and deadlines in 8 years from now. The idea here is to discuss what is the tax reform and what is happening. The dual value-added tax is the concept of the tax neutrality, the transition period, basic concepts, getting up to the price formation and how this change will impact companies, business, and our daily lives. So basically, Brazil need a tax reform. It's almost mandatory, because it's very complex in doing business in Brazil. The uncertainty is huge. The relationship between the government and Brazilian companies are not very friendly, because the government is always overviewing your operation, and the taxes are so complex that sometimes you get it wrong because of mistakes, or you take a different interpretations than it's the law, because it's up to interpretation. So, and you see further why this happens. So Brazil has a tax litigation more than 5.4 trillion reals. Approximately 50% of the gross domestic product in Brazil are in tax litigations, companies versus government, or people versus government. There are 26 states, federal district, and more than 5.5 thousand cities, and they all legislate for their own tax rations and their own rules. So the hour spent to deal with all the different regimes, tax regimes in Brazil, are more than any other country in the world. So there is this table here that you can see. The Brazilians spend more than 1.5 thousand hours per year on average for each company on dealing with tax bureaucracies. So this is much higher than the average worldwide, which is 233 hours. US, we're talking about 175. So Brazil really takes from the accountants. We usually tax the revenue, and now we are moving through what is most common in the world with the value-added taxes. So in this conversation, I'm assuming you know a little bit about the Brazilian tax system. I will try to put it back for us on how this is happening, or how it is and how it's going to be. But you probably know a little bit if you are interested in this topic. So we move on. And if you have questions, you can ask, and I will be very pleased to answer. So despite of all the technology, Brazil has a very inefficient system regarding tax bureaucracies. We spent a lot of time with bureaucracies and provide information to the government regarding your product, your supplier, your client. And imagine this as a country, in every single company in Brazil providing information to the government in who they do business with, how much they pay for it, and what they purchase and what you sold. And this goes all to a very technological system. It's called the SPAD. And this is monthly providing information to the Brazilian government regarding your revenue and how much tax you need to pay. This goes to the federal, state, and cities and municipalities. The Brazil has basically three tax regimes: the national simple, the presumed profit, and the real profit. They won't change in this tax reform, but they will change a little bit how they deal with the cumulative and non-cumulative taxes. Cumulative means that there are taxes over taxes. The non-cumulative means that is the taxes of the value you add to your product or service. So you take credits by your acquisitions and pay your debit when you sell your product or service. So we're talking about the dual value-added taxes. They will be the same legislation, but they will have different ratios and different information to the city, to the states, and to the federal government. They are foreseeing that the tax will be prepared by the government, but the companies are responsible for it, so this will change a lot. Hopefully, we'll simplify how we deal with all this information, how we put all this information together to the government. So this is how they think they will simplify the life of the accountants and to have a much more simple system for the tax environment. So the tax reform, the Complementary Law, was published in January 2025, and they institute the IBS and the CBS. So putting together IPI, COFINS, and PIS, they create the CBS. The ICMS, the ISS, they create the IBS. So IPI, COFINS, and PIS are usually taxes on revenue, and ICMS is taxes on your products, and ISS, it is taxes on your services. So they are putting together ICMS, which is regarding to products, and ISS, which is regards to services. ICMS, you could have a ratio about 20, a max at 22%, and ISS maximum at 5. So they're merging together. So what will be a fair ratio when you merge everybody that is 22 as a product and 5% as a service? The idea is that you have only one ratio to worry about, and we'll see if this is true or not in the next slides and the next minutes. So we put together IPI, COFINS, and PIS as the CBS, which is the federal tax right now. Why not? Why we didn't have only one if we're putting them together and they will have the same principle, the same legislation? This is basically because the Brazilian Constitution, they need to have a federal contribution, and also state and municipal contributions, which will be the IBS. So one is imposto and the other is contribution. One is tax and the other is contribution, but they go the same. They start on the principle of the neutrality, so they're trying to create a much more simple system, and this will avoid the discrepancy of one company that invests a lot of time on creating solutions, tax solutions, to become much more attractive and to have a competitive advantage between your competitors. If it's more simple, they will bring a neutrality of these decisions. So Brazil is full of companies that is located in one state because of tax benefit, that transfer the merchandise to another state because of its tax benefits and distributes. So there is a lot of advantages and distributed channels just because of taxes decision based. So what is the agenda? How is the tax reform agenda? We are in 2025. We already have some due dates here. They will change the nota fiscal layout. So starting in October already, we have a little change. in institution of the IBS and the CBS inside the fiscal notes, and also some information about the payment method and how it's going to be, for how long, and when it's going to be due that service or product sold. So starting from October, we already have the first due date, the relevant due date here. And in 2027, PIS and COFINS are discontinued. So the institution of the CBS and the selective tax, which I'm not gonna discuss here, but later on we can discuss on that. But let's stick on the CBS institution and the discontinued PIS and COFINS. So now in 2027 ends the main discussions of the non-cumulativeness of the PIS and COFINS. And in 2029, the IBS starts increasing rates 2029 up to 2032, sorry. So it starts 10% in 2029, 20% 2030, 30% 2031, 40% 2032, and then become full IBS in 2033. Definitions. Right on the third article of the Complementary Law, it already brings up the information here that any and all assets that involve movable or immovable, material or immaterial assets, including rights, are considered transaction with goods. So we are talking about the taxes between the goods and services. So the first they tell you what's considered goods, and then what is services. And they state services are everything that's not classified as goods. So here is very clear the intention of the Brazilian government to tax all the business activities in Brazil. So anything is considered products, including rights, and what's not considered products, goods, will be considered as services. So very simple as that. They are able to get all together. So they classify the supply, when is the supply, the delivery or availability of the material, and here are some more information regarding it. But keep in mind, we are now taxing all that involve material, immaterial, rights, and anything as a services. What's the hypothesis of incidences? So in the fourth article, they say the IBS and CBS are levied on onerous transactions with goods or services. Okay, so here is very important. ICMS, Imposto sobre Circulação de Mercadoria e Serviços. So they say the circulation of the merchandise. So by the fact of me circulating the merchandise, I already had to understand if I had to pay taxes or not. But right now, we're talking about the onerous transactions, so it changed a whole lot of ideas and taxes strategies regarding the goods movements in Brazil. But now they increase the lease, licensing, concession, and assignments. So lease before was not neither services and neither products, which we had only PIS and COFINS over the lease. Now the reform will grab also these activities. So the donation, consideration of the benefit of the donor, onerous institute of rights in rem. So if we are talking about anytime we purchase an assets, we take credits on the assets. If we are paying dividends with an asset, it's fair that we pay the taxes over the asset that we are giving as dividends. So this will be onerous rights. But they also say there are hypotheses of non-onerous transactions with goods and services that will be also taxed in specific cases. So provision of gifts and bonuses. This will also be a hypothesis of incidence of IBS and CBS. There are some others, but we can discuss how it was and how it is. So speaking about the incidence of hypothesis again, we are also have other non-onerous suppliers or at a lower value than the market value of the goods and services. So here, Brazil already treats the transfer prices straight in the Article 5 of the Complementary Law. Taxable events. This changed a lot. Brazil is used to tax when the issuance of the fiscal note and all the tax surveillances are related to when the fiscal notes were issued. But now it changed a little bit to the completion of the services provision. So what it changed? Basically, we are right now speaking about when the merchandise is transferred its owner. So when I deliver the goods. Imagine a services, a consulting service that takes 6 months to completion. When I'm gonna tax? When it's complete and it's done, or through the payments as an advance. This is not very clear yet, but soon we'll have information about this and I will be glad to share with you. So government purchase at the time of payment. So this is a taxable event. So there will be withholding and reduction to zero of the taxes of IBS and CBS. And it changes for the end of the transport. All the fiscal notes has on the top information about when it's delivered, when it's received. So we probably will need to take care more than it is right now, the information of the end user, of when the merchandise was delivered. And this will be the taxable event at the time. So the operation site, the local of operation, where the tax is due. So the tax reform states that it's due where the service is provided or the merchandise is acquired. So for example, if I have different ratios between cities that are close by, where I'm gonna buy the product, or will I have to know every ratio from all cities and states that I'm delivering the goods? The answer is yes. We will now need to understand and to follow the legislation of where you're selling and who you're selling to. So this is a considerable change in how we're dealing with taxes before and now. Calculation basis. So it's the value of the transaction as expected. And also they include a little bit the interest, fines, accruals, and charges. It's also a base of calculations. Discounts under condition. This is the same as it is right now in Brazil. But the second paragraph, it states the following are not included in the calculation of the basis of IBS and CBS. The amount of the IBS and CBS levied on the operation. What it means? The calculation now, it's what we call outside. Before ICMS and PIS and COFINS used to be inside calculation. It's a formula that is hard to comprehend what is the effective ratio of how much you're paying taxes. And you will see the formula and the examples in the next few minutes. But this changed, and I feel like all the strategy and everyone that understands this properly will have an advantage on negotiating prices of its own products and also prices of its product acquisition and suppliers. You need to understand what is the margin that your supplier was operating and what he's foreseeing right now with the tax reform. So this is a very, very important information here on the second paragraph on Article 12. Rates. This is important. I told you already that will be the biggest IVA in the world. Actually, the VAT, the value added tax, IVA in Portuguese, IVA. So talking about the VAT, the union shall set its CBS rate. Each state shall set IBS rate, and each municipality, each city shall set its IBS rate. So we have 26 states, 5.5 thousand cities in Brazil. Each of them can set its own rate? Yes. As it is in the legislation, you're completely correct. But hopefully we don't see a mess as we see on ICMS, not ICMS, which I play around with this acronym because it's very, very hard to understand and to follow through all the rules. So all we see is a mess with the ICMS and all the states legislating its own rules and ratios and tax benefits, and regarding the transport of the merchandise, not onerous activities. So it's complex, and that's why we see huge litigation. Who is the liable to collecting taxes in IBS and CBS? The supplier that carry out the operation, the purchaser, the importer, and the one expressly provided for other cases in this supplementary law. And in paragraph 6 is the first time we see this term of split payment, which means that the financial the financial responsible, like the banks, will also be liable for collecting tax, which means that you pay for your supplier and the bank asks for the committee if these taxes were already collected. If was not, the bank will withhold what is tax sent to the government, and you receive the liquid amount. So what are the methods of extinguish the debits of taxes? The offsetting with credit, so how much I purchased and how much I sold. So basically the non-cumulative and how much I'm putting into, how much value I'm adding into the operation. And also with the payment by the taxpayers, the payment of the financial settlement, the banks, as I said, the payment by the purchaser, and any other payment to whom this complementary law assigns responsibility. So what the government did, they said, okay, we are trying to grab all the business activities in Brazil. So in this case, if we are grabbing all the business activities in Brazil, if you are paying to the bank, you will pay taxes up in front with the split payment. You will be able to offset with your credits as long your supplier had collect taxes previous the operation. And you also will pay taxes. So the government kind of caught everybody, but when he will not be able to collect taxes in cash payments and also probably in bitcoins or any other digital currency that the government would not be able to grab right away the taxes. So they manage by the Article 27 to tell you, I'm taxing every activity basically and all the payment methods available for you to close the operation. So how the split payment's gonna work? Basically, the company here will issue the fiscal note, sending it to your customer, and also to we call the Comitê Gestor, the Management Committee, and the Brazilian IRS, and also with information of the liquidation, the payment information in the fiscal note. So whenever the client pays for its supplier, they will send the money to the bank, and the bank, prior sending to its supplier, the client, the company now you ask, hey, management committee, they already collect the taxes, and if the answer is yes, they will send the full amount of money to the company. If the answer is no, the bank will manage to pay the taxes and the liquid amount to the company that sold the products. So before, let's state that we sold the product on the July 30th, and the due date of the invoice is in 30 days. So before, by the 25th day of the month, we already collect the taxes. So even though we didn't receive the money yet, we already paid the taxes. But let's say that the same amount sold was with only 10 days due. So which would be by the August 9th. And the client pays you on August 9, goes to the bank, and the bank asks, hey, the taxes were already collected, and says no. Okay, the company only receives the liquid amount. The taxes goes straight to the IRS, and before, companies could have a financial cycling with these taxes, but not anymore. This will not be a possibility. And how can I not pay taxes? Maybe later on, asking for renegotiate the taxes. How it's gonna work? Probably I don't see a way, because you're already being taxed by your client, by your financial institution, by the acquisition, and you only get the credit of the operation if your supplier paid for the operation. So you probably will be in your interest that your supplier pays its tax on time, because then you can also have the benefit of crediting. So these are all in the Article 31st to 35 about what I just explained about the split payment. I'll speed up a little bit. And then we go to pricing. So this is an example here. Let's say this consulting company is choose for the presumed profit. So this means that there are the fixed ratio for P's and COFINS, which is our 0.65 and 3%, and also the 5% of the service provided of the ISS, totally 80.65. So you have your net amount of 10,000. So you would expect that your taxes would be 865 reals. But no, since I was telling you there are taxes added by taxes, the calculation right now is what we call inside. So this is the formula that we are having right now because of the calculation inside the net amount. So you would expect 865 reals, but you get 10,946. So it's very tough to understand how much tax we are paying if we are in these scenarios. But with the tax reform, how it's gonna be? The calculation will be what we call outside. So we have the 10,000, which was the same cost, but now we are talking about the 27%. So now we're talking about the 27% tax ratio. So the service price would be 12,700. Okay, so this is much expensiver than it was before. How am I gonna negotiate this with my client? The secret is right here. Right now, you pay the 10.9 thousand, and you don't get credit on this operation for the consulting company. But right now, with the what we call the non-cumulativeness fullness, so you'll be able to get the 2,700 as a credit of the operation. So your cost will actually be 10,000, and before your cost was 10.9 thousand. So who is gonna grab this difference? I think who negotiate better, who is understanding what we're talking about. So you need to be able to explain your purchaser and your seller and your commercial team about the necessity of understanding this concept. And I'm pretty sure companies in Brazil will be all over this information, because prices are gonna suffer big change in this period. So this is in this example, we bring the PIS and COFINS and also the ISS to 27%. So let's think about another example. So the industry in Brazil right now, the price of merchandising, this is a formula here that the 18% is the ICMS, the 9.25% is PIS and COFINS, but in 2 years ago, they decide that the PIS and COFINS, the ICMS cannot be on the basis of calculus of PIS and COFINS. So now this is the formula we are applying. So you already get a copy, an example of this formula. This might help you out. So for 10,000 cost, the merchandise right now costs 13,438,000 reais. With the tax reform, we already mentioned that services and products will be the same ratio. Here we are talking about the 27, but they say they can get up to 28%. So right now the sum of the nominal rates correspond to 27.25% ICMS, PIS, and COFINS for most of the cases. So you can notice the reduction of the price. How this is gonna work? The prices are reducing. I'm gonna be able to argue with my supplier, argue with my client, how we are getting ready for this as companies and understanding the price formation on this scenario. Here I have another comparison to you on how it is nowadays, how it is on the reform, and how, so let's go again, how it is nowadays, how it is on the reform, and how it is as if I am able to maintain its price as an industry. So right now, for 100,000, I have 18% of ICMS, 1.35% of PIS, and 6.23% of COFINS. These ratios, because I already subtract the ICMS from the basis of calculus. So what is my revenue with taxes? So my gross revenue would be 134,000. So the company that purchased is able to get the 34,000 on taxes, on tax credits, and the cost on the client basis is the 100,000. In the reform, if I maintain its price, my new price, if I maintain its cost, my new price will be 127,000, because I will apply only the IBS plus CBS ratio. Keep in mind, the 27 is still an optimistic view. So the new cost will be 127, the cost for the client will be 100 also. But if I'm able to maintain this price, the client will pay the same amount, 134,000, they'll be able to credit 28,500, but the cost will be higher on 6% basically. So am I ready to negotiate this? Am I ready to get all the questions regarding my supplier on these matters? This will be what we'll face on the next few years, and this calculation will definitely have to do a lot with how much your company is returning to its investors. So with this, I think I'm able to bring you the idea of what's going on in Brazil and how these tax reforms are dealing with us and what we need to do. So the key changes are the centralized and assisted tax calculations. So the change in the fiscal structure in Brazil and tax plan will be big time discussed in the next few years. It's unnecessary to evaluate taxes on transfer of materials on just by transferring goods. It's a non-onerous and a non-taxable activities. Taxation at destination. So right now, if you have branches in different states, you have one calculation of taxes per state. But right now, you will have on your destination, so you don't need to worry about all the branches, and then we'll be able to have only one centralized accessory obligation to comply with the taxes reports, and the full of non-cumulativeness. This was very expected from us that deals with it. So right now, if you are familiar with, there are different times that I can credit taxes on ICMS and PIS and COFINS, and both says that in the product inputs. But the PIS and COFINS really says about the how important it is to your process. If you need to purchase that to provide your services or your products, you can get a credit on that acquisition. But the ICMS states also that you need to be your product inputs, and they need to have straight contact with what you're producing it. So it's interpretative, and this is one of the reasons about the high litigation in taxes in Brazil. So the idea of the unificating taxes with different legislation and structure are big changes on the tax reform in Brazil. And are you ready? Count it me, count it us at Abreu Barros to help you out. Any questions, drop out here. I'll be happy to answer. Take care. Bye-bye.